The dawn was just breaking over Asia when the first murmurs began to ripple through the global financial circuits. In trading floors from Mumbai to Chicago, where desks were typically abuzz with the pre-market rituals of coffee and data analysis, a single headline materialized on news screens, instantly shattering the calm. Burkina Faso, a small landlocked nation in West Africa, seals a $14 billion 10-year agreement with India to export 20 million metric tons of maize and sorghum. The news was, for many, an outright shock. Burkina Faso, a country often recognized globally for its rich gold reserves, extensive cotton fields, and regrettably its recurrent political instability, had never been considered a significant player in the international grain trade. India, on the other hand, was a colossal agricultural producer, boasting immense domestic harvests. The immediate questions that seized journalists, market analysts, and policymakers worldwide were stark. Why this deal? And why now? The financial world's response was nothing short of instantaneous and electric. Within minutes, grain prices across major commodity exchanges, Mumbai, Chicago, London, spiked sharply. Futures contracts for both maize and sorghum soared as traders scrambled to quantify the potential impact of such a substantial new supply chain on global markets. Agricultural analysts were urgently brought onto live television, their pronouncements varying from a historic shift to a game-changer in global food security. A palpable unease spread among traditional grain exporters, particularly in South America and Eastern Europe, who had long dominated the lucrative Asian markets. Burkina Faso, seemingly from obscurity, had just staked a significant claim in their domain. Yet the official announcement itself was remarkably terse, devoid of the usual political fanfare or grand rhetoric. 3 concise paragraphs outlined the core facts: 20 million tons of grain, $14 billion in value, a 10-year supply commitment. It was a stark reminder that sometimes the simplest words can generate the most profound global repercussions. Superficially, this transaction appeared to be a straightforward business deal. Burkina Faso selling grain, India buying it. However, a deeper geopolitical and strategic analysis reveals a far more intricate narrative. This agreement was not merely about trade. It represented a sophisticated new strategy for nations to bolster their resilience against future shocks, particularly in an era marked by escalating climate volatility and supply chain vulnerabilities. For India, the agreement was fundamentally an exercise in enhancing national food security and economic stability. Its massive population and rapidly growing economy are critically dependent on its domestic food system, which remains heavily susceptible to the erratic nature of the monsoon rains. Bumper harvests follow good monsoons. Weak rains precipitate shortages, driving up prices and fueling inflation, with direct political and social consequences. By securing a long-term diversified supply from Burkina Faso, India was strategically constructing a robust safety net, mitigating the inherent risks posed by an increasingly unpredictable climate. For Burkina Faso, the deal transcended mere economic opportunity. It was a powerful statement of recognition and strategic reorientation. For too long, the country's international image had been largely confined to its resource endowments and internal challenges. This agreement dramatically unveiled another facet, that of an emerging agricultural power, capable of leveraging its untapped potential on the global stage. It challenged preconceived notions and positioned Burkina Faso as a proactive player in global food security, demonstrating that even a landlocked African nation could command a critical role in feeding billions. For the broader international community, it served as a powerful testament to the interconnectedness of modern markets and the evolving dynamics of global trade, where traditional hierarchies are increasingly being challenged by emergent partnerships. Such a monumental agreement was not forged overnight. In fact, the genesis of this partnership can be traced back several years, a process characterized by quiet diplomacy and meticulous groundwork. Approximately 3 years prior, Burkina Faso's leadership initiated a deliberate strategy to engage with international trade and food security forums. Their approach was notably understated, eschewing flashy presentations for a sober, data-driven articulation of their nation's vast, yet underexploited, agricultural potential. This measured engagement resonated particularly with Indian officials. New Delhi had already recognized the imperative to diversify its food import portfolio. The geopolitical and climatic risks associated with over-reliance on a limited number of grain-exporting regions, especially in the context of accelerated climate change, had become increasingly apparent. Therefore, when Burkina Faso presented itself as a potential steady and long-term partner, India perceived a strategic opportunity worthy of extensive exploration. The initial dialogues between the two nations prioritized trust building over immediate transactional details. Indian trade envoys undertook extensive reconnaissance missions, visiting Burkina Faso's central plains, meticulously inspecting nascent grain silos, and engaging directly with local farmers. They posed probing questions. Could the harvest volumes consistently meet the demanding export quotas? Was the quality of maize and sorghum amenable to international standards? Could a guaranteed supply commitment be sustained for a decade? Through this rigorous, step-by-step process, mutual confidence steadily accumulated. A formidable logistical hurdle loomed large: Burkina Faso's landlocked status. For any aspiring major exporter, the absence of direct access to the sea is an operational nightmare. To transport millions of tons of grain to distant Indian ports, the crops would necessitate complex cross-border transit through neighboring coastal countries, onward to their respective ports, and only then across vast oceans. Initial skepticism was widespread regarding the feasibility of such an undertaking. The sheer scale of moving immense volumes of grain via intricate multimodal routes would demand colossal financial investment, meticulous strategic planning, and a substantial upgrade of existing or construction of new infrastructure, none of which were fully in place. However, this seemingly insurmountable problem was ingeniously reframed into a unique opportunity for deepened cooperation. Both India and Burkina Faso committed to a joint investment strategy in critical infrastructure development. Existing railway networks within Burkina Faso and its transit corridors were slated for upgrade, new road networks meticulously planned, and port storage facilities in nearby coastal nations like Ghana, Togo, and Côte d'Ivoire earmarked for significant expansion. What had initially appeared to be an impossible barrier thus transformed into a powerful symbol of creative, collaborative problem-solving. By tackling the complex logistics issue together, both nations unequivocally demonstrated that this was far more than a mere agreement on paper. It was a foundational partnership designed for sustained future engagement. This collaborative approach also carried a powerful message for other landlocked African nations, illustrating that geographical constraints need not be economic handcuffs when strategic partnerships and infrastructure investment are prioritized. India is frequently lauded as a grain giant, consistently producing hundreds of millions of tons of staple crops annually, including rice, wheat, maize, and sorghum. On paper, this often leads to the perception of agricultural self-sufficiency. However, the underlying reality is considerably more nuanced and fraught with complexities. While certain years yield unprecedented bumper harvests, often leading to overflowing warehouses, India's post-harvest storage infrastructure and supply chain management frequently prove inadequate. This results in significant post-harvest losses, with substantial quantities of grain perishing before reaching the consumer. Conversely, years marked by insufficient rainfall or aberrant weather patterns trigger weak harvests, compelling the government to resort to expensive, often urgent, food imports to avert domestic shortages. This inherent boom and bust cycle renders India's food security system inherently fragile and highly susceptible to climate variability. By strategically importing from Burkina Faso, India gains a crucial climate-induced advantage. The rainfall patterns in West Africa, particularly in Burkina Faso's agricultural zones, are distinct from those governing the Indian monsoon. A deficient monsoon season in India does not automatically translate into a poor harvest season in West Africa. This climatic uncorrelation makes Burkina Faso an invaluable natural insurance policy against India's persistent and escalating weather unpredictability. The selection of Burkina Faso as a partner raised questions among many experts. Given the existence of larger, more established grain exporters in regions like South America or Europe. The answer, upon deeper scrutiny, reveals a confluence of political, economic, and trust-based considerations that underscore the evolving contours of global diplomacy. Firstly, India offered a more holistic package than simply transactional purchases. Beyond acquiring grain, it pledged substantial investment in Burkina Faso's agricultural sector. This encompassed financing the construction of modern silos, funding critical irrigation projects to enhance water security for farmers, and implementing comprehensive training programs to equip local farmers with contemporary agricultural technologies and best practices. This multifaceted approach ensured that even as grain was exported, Burkina Faso's indigenous farming system was simultaneously strengthened, fostering long-term sustainability and growth. This distinguished India's engagement from pure extractive trade relationships. Secondly, and critically from Burkina Faso's perspective, India approached the deal devoid of heavy political conditions or geopolitical quid pro quos. In contrast, many established global powers frequently intertwine trade agreements with demands for military alignment, political influence, or adherence to specific governance models. Burkina Faso, like many developing nations, sought a genuine partner, not a patron. India's framing of the agreement as a partnership between equals, rooted in mutual respect and shared development objectives, was significantly more appealing and strategically aligned with Burkina Faso's pursuit of sovereign decision-making. Finally, the relationship was underpinned by a decade of quiet, incremental cooperation. Over the past 10 years, smaller trade links in sectors such as textiles, pharmaceuticals, and machinery had progressively nurtured a foundation of trust and familiarity between the two nations. The $14 billion grain deal, therefore, was not an abrupt initiation of a relationship, but rather the culmination of years of sustained, low-profile bilateral engagement and growing confidence. The $14 billion deal transcended the purely economic realm of food commodities. It was also a significant geopolitical statement. In the interconnected global landscape, trade and politics are inextricably linked. Nations do not merely engage in the buying and selling of goods, they actively construct alliances, fortify diplomatic friendships, and cultivate long-term spheres of influence. For India, this agreement represented a crucial assertion of leadership and strategic presence in Africa. While economic competitors such as China and various Middle Eastern countries had been aggressively pursuing agricultural land and long-term supply contracts across the African continent, India had, until recently, adopted a more cautious pace. By striking this landmark deal with Burkina Faso, India unequivocally signaled its intent to be a proactive and reliable partner in Africa, willing to commit substantial resources and expertise. This move aligns with India's broader Look Africa policy, aimed at deepening South-South cooperation and fostering a multipolar global order. For Burkina Faso, the decision to partner with India over other potential buyers was equally a strategic political calculus. It served as a powerful declaration to the international community that the nation was capable of making independent economic and diplomatic choices, rather than passively adhering to traditional trade partners or geopolitical blocs. It was a clear message that Burkina Faso was ready to assert its agency within the global system, on its own terms, aligning with partners that offered genuine collaboration and capacity building rather than transactional dependency. This resonated with a broader trend among African nations seeking to diversify their external partnerships and reduce historical dependencies. The announcement of the deal generated considerable excitement and introspection across West Africa. Neighboring countries, observing Burkina Faso's unexpected success, immediately began to ponder. If Burkina Faso can achieve this, why not us? Many African nations possess vast tracts of fertile, arable land and considerable untapped potential for large-scale grain production. However, they frequently contend with systemic deficits in critical infrastructure, insufficient investment capital, and the arduous task of cultivating international trust necessary to materialize such ambitious export ventures. The Burkina Faso deal served as a potent proof of concept, demonstrating that with the right strategic vision, targeted investment, and a commitment to equitable partnerships, even a landlocked country could transform into a significant global agricultural player. In the coming years, experts anticipate a surge of interest among other African nations to upgrade their port facilities, railway networks, and grain storage silos. They are likely to emulate Burkina Faso's model, actively seeking to forge their own long-term, mutually beneficial agreements with major food-importing nations in Asia and the Middle East, keen to secure diversified supply chains. Burkina Faso may have effectively opened the door, but a cohort of eager followers appears ready to step through. This regional inspiration could catalyze significant infrastructure development and economic integration across the continent, potentially reinforcing initiatives like the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, by stimulating intra-African trade and cross-border infrastructure development. Unsurprisingly, the deal was not universally lauded. In South America, prominent grain-exporting nations such as Argentina and Brazil immediately perceived the agreement as a direct challenge to their established market dominance in Asia. Similarly, Eastern European exporters, particularly Ukraine, a historically pivotal supplier of grains, viewed the emergence of a new African competitor with considerable apprehension. These nations had invested substantially in developing and maintaining their supply chains to India and other lucrative Asian markets. The sudden entry of a new, substantial player necessitated a re-evaluation of their competitive strategies. Industry analysts swiftly predicted a period of adjustment in global grain prices. Established exporters in other regions might be compelled to lower their prices, offer more attractive trade terms, or enhance the efficiency of their logistics to safeguard their market share. Some analysts even cautioned about the potential for future price wars in the highly competitive global grain market. However, a significant number of economists maintained that, in the long run, the deal would be a net positive for the global market. It would contribute to reducing the dangerous over-reliance on a concentrated group of exporters, distributing supply more broadly across the world. This geographical diversification would inherently render the global food system more stable, resilient, and less susceptible to localized climate shocks or geopolitical disruptions. It champions the principle of distributed risk management in global supply chains. Within Burkina Faso itself, one of the most sensitive and pressing questions revolved around domestic food security. If we export such vast quantities of grain, will our own people still have enough to eat? The government of Burkina Faso demonstrated a clear understanding of this legitimate concern, recognizing that domestic food security could not be sacrificed at the altar of export revenues. Consequently, the agreement was meticulously crafted to include stringent safeguards. A fixed, non-negotiable percentage of Burkina Faso's total national grain production would be explicitly reserved for domestic consumption. This critical provision ensured that, irrespective of how high global commodity prices might surge, this protected portion could not be diverted for international sale. Furthermore, a stipulated portion of the revenue generated from the deal would be strategically channeled back into the local economy. This funding would be utilized to subsidize domestic food prices, ensuring affordability for ordinary citizens, and to finance new irrigation projects, thereby expanding arable land and boosting overall agricultural productivity. The overarching objective was a synergistic one: to elevate overall grain production to a level that could comfortably meet both the demands of the export agreement and the nutritional needs of the burgeoning local population. While the long-term success of this delicate balancing act remains contingent on consistent implementation and adaptive policy, the foresight in its planning is undeniable, reflecting a commitment to sustainable development goals and national well-being. While most international headlines fixated on the implications for human food consumption, another equally vital yet often overlooked aspect of the deal pertained to animal feed. Sorghum, one of the primary grains in the agreement, is a crucial ingredient in livestock and poultry feed formulations. India's dairy and poultry industries are among the fastest growing in the world, driven by a burgeoning middle class and increasing demand for protein. These industries critically depend on a reliable, cost-effective supply of animal feed to sustain their rapid expansion. By securing long-term access to Burkina Faso's sorghum, India was simultaneously safeguarding the future of its massive milk, chicken, and egg industries. This was a particularly astute strategic move, as shortages or price spikes in animal feed can rapidly escalate the cost of everyday food items like milk and meat, often triggering significant economic discontent and political instability. Thus, the deal transcended mere human food security. It was an integral component of broader economic stability for industries that collectively employ millions of people and provide affordable protein to India's vast and growing population. This underscores the intricate linkages within national food systems and the cascading effects of commodity prices. Another formidable strength embedded within the India-Burkina Faso grain deal lies in its inherent climate diversity. As previously noted, India's agricultural output, particularly of staple grains, is heavily reliant on the precarious timing and volume of the monsoon. The consequences of climate change are exacerbating this unpredictability, leading to more frequent occurrences of extreme weather events, from devastating floods caused by excessive rainfall to widespread droughts resulting from insufficient precipitation. Burkina Faso's climatic profile, conversely, is distinct. Its primary grain-producing regions operate under different, though also climate-sensitive, rainfall patterns. This climatic disjunction means that a year marked by a severe monsoon failure in India might still coincide with a favorable, or at least less impacted, harvest season in West Africa. By formally linking the agricultural fortunes of these two geographically distinct nations, the deal effectively functions as a cross-continental climate insurance policy. This strategic diversification significantly reduces the probability of both countries simultaneously confronting widespread grain shortages, thereby fortifying their collective resilience against the increasing threats posed by global climate change. It is a deceptively simple yet profoundly powerful mechanism for risk mitigation in an era of unprecedented environmental uncertainty, aligning with global strategies for climate adaptation and resilient food systems. The agreement extended beyond the simple exchange of commodities. It encompassed a significant commitment to capacity building. India formally pledged to share advanced farming technologies and expertise with Burkina Faso. This crucial component included provisions for modern irrigation systems, which are vital for enhancing productivity and reducing reliance on rain-fed agriculture, improved storage solutions to minimize post-harvest losses, and comprehensive farmer training programs designed to disseminate best practices in sustainable agriculture, crop management, and market access. For Burkina Faso's farmers, this meant far more than merely having a guaranteed buyer for their produce. It represented an invaluable opportunity to acquire new skills, improve crop yields, reduce waste, and transition towards more sustainable and economically viable farming practices. These enhanced capabilities and knowledge bases are long-term assets, poised to benefit the country's agricultural sector long after the initial 10-year deal concludes. For India, this investment in Burkina Faso's agricultural prowess ensures a steady and robust supply of grain for years to come, aligning supplier capability with purchaser demand. It embodies a quintessential win-win scenario. Burkinabe farmers achieve greater prosperity and resilience, export volumes remain strong, and India secures the long-term food stability it desperately needs. Perhaps the most transformative aspect of the deal was its ambitious promise of shared infrastructure development. India's commitment to invest in modernizing Burkina Faso's grain storage silos, expanding its road networks, and significantly improving transit connections to coastal ports in neighboring countries stands out. These infrastructure enhancements are not merely instrumental for facilitating grain exports. They are poised to generate profound and far-reaching benefits for Burkina Faso's entire economy. Improved transportation infrastructure translates directly into faster, more efficient trade flows, stimulating economic activity across various sectors. It creates new employment opportunities, both directly in construction and logistics, and indirectly in other industries that benefit from reduced transport costs and improved connectivity. Sectors like textiles, mining, and light manufacturing stand to gain considerably from a modernized national infrastructure backbone. In this comprehensive sense, the grain deal transcends its agricultural origins. It is fundamentally a national development project, laying down critical infrastructure, roads, railways, and upgraded ports that will serve Burkina Faso's economic diversification and growth agenda for decades to come, thereby enhancing its competitive position within the West African sub-region. On a deeper, more profound level, the $14 billion deal between India and Burkina Faso signifies a discernible shift in the global economic and geopolitical order. For an extended period, international trade, particularly in strategic commodities, was overwhelmingly dominated by a relatively small constellation of powerful players: the United States, Europe, Brazil, and China. Smaller nations, especially those geographically disadvantaged or perceived as less economically significant, were often marginalized or confined to peripheral roles. This groundbreaking agreement, however, powerfully demonstrated that even a landlocked African country, through astute strategic planning, sustained commitment, and the cultivation of trust with the right partner, can ascend to play a significant role on the global stage. It directly challenged the entrenched notion that only wealthy or coastal nations could effectively participate in and influence global trade dynamics. For India, the deal was equally a declaration of its strategic autonomy and rising global influence. It showed that the country is no longer content to passively await the dictates of established global powers concerning its food supply or economic security. Instead, India is proactively building its own diversified partnerships and forging new supply chains to secure its future, even if that necessitates reaching thousands of miles across continents. This aligns with India's broader strategic calculus of fostering a multipolar world and strengthening South-South cooperation, seeking partners who share its vision of equitable development and non-aligned diplomacy. The Burkina Faso-India deal offers a compelling set of lessons for numerous nations grappling with the challenges of food security, economic development, and strategic autonomy in the 21st century. Firstly, it underscores the paramount importance of diversification. No country, irrespective of its size or economic might, should become overly reliant on a single region or a limited set of suppliers for its fundamental food needs. The volatile confluence of climate change, geopolitical conflicts, and protectionist trade policies can disrupt supply chains at any given moment, with potentially devastating consequences. The deal champions the principle of distributed risk. Secondly, the agreement unequivocally highlights the critical role of infrastructure. Without strategic investment in modernized railways, efficient storage silos, and well-equipped ports, the full potential of agricultural exports, or any exports for that matter, cannot be realized. Burkina Faso's success in leveraging Indian investment to address its logistical challenges may inspire other African nations to prioritize and invest in their own infrastructure, enhancing their capacity to compete effectively in global markets and integrate regional economies. This could accelerate the implementation of the AFCFTA by facilitating trade flows. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, the partnership between India and Burkina Faso serves as a powerful testament to the viability and efficacy of equitable partnerships. Rather than approaching the relationship with heavy political conditionalities or a neo-colonial mindset, India offered fair terms, tangible financial investment, technological transfer, and, critically, mutual respect. This approach is far more conducive to fostering stronger, more sustainable, and genuinely collaborative friendships between nations, laying the groundwork for long-term strategic alliances that benefit all parties. The agreement is formally signed, but the journey of its implementation has only just commenced. Over the next decade, Burkina Faso faces the formidable task of consistently delivering the promised grain volumes without compromising its own domestic food security, a delicate balance that will require vigilant governance and adaptive agricultural policies. India, for its part, must ensure that its infrastructure investments are completed on schedule, that logistical pathways operate with optimal efficiency, and that the technological transfer yields tangible improvements on the ground. The path ahead will undoubtedly be punctuated by challenges: unforeseen climate shocks, unpredictable global price swings in commodity markets, and potential political changes in either nation or the transit countries. However, if both nations remain steadfastly committed to the spirit of the agreement and its underlying principles of mutual benefit and resilience, this partnership has the potential to become a globally recognized model for future trade deals worldwide. Already, major international organizations and development agencies are observing this initiative as a positive and proactive step towards strengthening global food security. Diversifying food supply chains across continents inherently reduces the risks of widespread global shortages, a critical imperative in an increasingly volatile world. In such an uncertain global landscape, this kind of strategic, collaborative cooperation is not merely a smart economic choice. It is an absolute necessity for global stability and sustainable development. From initial quiet conversations held in the peripheral corners of international trade forums, to a headline that reverberated through global markets, the $14 billion maize and sorghum deal is demonstrably far more than a simple exchange of goods. It is a powerful symbol of trust forged, strategy meticulously crafted, and vision boldly implemented. For Burkina Faso, it represents a defiant declaration that its identity will no longer be solely defined by its mineral wealth or agricultural staples like cotton. It is now unequivocally a rising agricultural hub with global significance. For India, it is a calculated and strategic maneuver to protect its vast population and burgeoning industries in an era characterized by pervasive climate uncertainty and supply chain vulnerabilities. For the rest of the world, it stands as irrefutable proof that even nations perceived as smaller or geographically constrained can, with strategic foresight and collaborative spirit, play an outsized role in shaping global food security. In this age of deeply interconnected markets and complex interdependencies, a deal meticulously signed in a landlocked corner of West Africa can indeed unleash ripples that traverse vast oceans, profoundly affecting the lives and livelihoods of billions across the globe. And that, precisely, is the transformative narrative that unfolded when India and Burkina Faso clasped hands on one of the largest grain deals in modern history.